"It can't be the end," Clara murmured, her aged hands trembling as the judge adjusted her glasses, a life sentence about to be pronounced. The silence in the room was dense, a heavy veil of despair and resignation. Unjustly accused of a brutal murder, Clara felt the ground give way beneath her feet, her last hope slipping away, until a dark shape tore through the air, landing abruptly on the prosecutor's table, and the object that fell from its beak revealed a secret no one would dare imagine, forever changing everyone's destiny. The dark shape, a raven with glossy feathers and piercing eyes, landed with surprising agility on the pile of prosecution documents, disarranging them slightly. A small object, wrapped in faded fabric, slipped from its beak and rolled across the table, stopping inches from the prosecutor's hand. The murmur broke the heavy silence of the room, transforming the tension into a mix of astonishment and confusion. The judge, who was already opening her mouth to pronounce the sentence, closed it abruptly, her tired eyes wide for an instant of pure disbelief. Clara, her heart beating erratically in her chest, felt a spark of something she dared not name, perhaps hope, perhaps just a delusion. It was as if time had stood still, each person in the room trying to process the unusual event. The raven, oblivious to the chaos it had caused, tilted its head, observing everyone with almost human intelligence before taking flight again, disappearing through the same window it had entered, leaving behind only the breeze and the mysterious object. The prosecutor, a man of stern demeanor and impeccable posture, was the first to react, reaching out with hesitation for the package. His expression, previously one of contained triumph, was now pure perplexity. He unrolled the fabric with trembling fingers, revealing a small silver locket, old and somewhat oxidized. Inside it, carefully folded, was a piece of paper. The judge cleared her throat, regaining her composure. "Prosecutor, what is this? Please proceed." Her voice, though firm, carried a tone of curiosity she couldn't disguise. The prosecutor, still stunned, unfolded the paper. His eyes scanned the handwritten lines, and the color seemed to drain from his face. A silence, even deeper than before, fell over the courtroom, this time filled with palpable anxiety. He swallowed hard, raising his gaze to the judge, then to Clara, and finally to the audience, where a man in an impeccable suit, the scientist's former assistant, Dr. Augusto, sat observing everything with a scornful smile that now dissolved into panic. "Your Honor," the prosecutor began, his voice failing, this is a confession." He paused dramatically, his eyes fixed on Augusto. "The confession of Dr. Elias's true killer, and it's signed by Augusto Mendez." The revelation hit the room like lightning. A chorus of exclamations and whispers erupted. Clara felt her legs give way, but this time it wasn't from despair, but from an overwhelming shock, mixed with a sudden and uncontrollable wave of relief. Hot tears welled up in her eyes, blurring her vision of the judge, who now looked at Augusto with an expression of horror. The former assistant's smile had completely vanished, replaced by icy terror. He tried to stand, but was restrained by two security guards who, realizing the gravity of the situation, acted instinctively. Justice, which seemed to have abandoned Clara, now returned, brought by an unexpected messenger, and the web of lies began to unravel before everyone's eyes. The prosecutor, with Augusto Mendez's confession in hand, seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. His eyes, once full of conviction, now carried the weight of a monumental error, an injustice that had almost materialized by his own hands. He extended the paper to the judge, who took it with solemn seriousness, her thin, experienced fingers handling the document as if it were made of crystal. As she read, the judge's expression hardened, and an almost inaudible sigh escaped her lips. She raised her gaze to Augusto, who was now being dragged away by the guards. His face contorted into a mask of despair and contained fury. Clara, seated in the defendant's bench, watched the scene as if in a dream. Relief was a warm wave that enveloped her, dissolving the ice that had settled in her chest for so many months. The tears, which had once been bitter, now streamed down her wrinkled face, warm and liberating. She brought one hand to her chest, feeling her heart, once constricted by anguish, beat with renewed strength. It wasn't just freedom that was announced, but the restoration of her honor, the validation of her innocence that had seemed lost forever. The judge's gaze, previously one of condemnation, was now one of silent understanding, almost apologetic. "Mr. Mendez," the judge declared, her voice resonating with authority, but also with palpable sadness. "You will be detained immediately. This confession will be verified by experts, but the evidence is clear. The court is adjourned. Clara is, for now, free of all charges." A murmur of approval and astonishment swept through the room, transforming into timid applause that soon grew louder. People who had previously looked at her with suspicion now regarded her with admiration and a profound sense of justice. Clara, still in shock, tried to stand, but her legs trembled, and she needed the support of one of the defense lawyers, who approached with a gentle smile and tear-filled eyes. He helped her out of the bench, and she felt the firm ground beneath her feet, a sensation she hadn't experienced in a long time. Augusto, as he was being led away, shouted disconnected words, his voice choked with panic and rage. "It's not true! It was a trap! I didn't do it!" But his words were lost in the commotion, and the image of the silver locket with the handwritten confession hung over the room like undeniable truth. The prosecutor, still pale, approached the judge, exchanging a few words in a low voice, both visibly shaken by the turn of events. That raven, such an improbable messenger, had unraveled a web of lies that the most rigorous human investigation could not untangle. Clara felt a deep peace begin to settle. The image of Dr. Elias, her mentor and friend, came to her mind, and she felt a mix of sadness for the loss and gratitude for the justice that was finally being served. That altruistic man, who had taught and supported her so much, would now have his name and memory cleared, and the true culprit would pay for his cruel act. Human connection, faith in truth, and the overcoming of an obstacle that seemed insurmountable, all manifested in that moment. She knew there was still a path ahead, but the darkness had dissipated, and a light, brought by a raven and a piece of paper, illuminated her future. The peace Clara felt was not just the absence of pain, but the vibrant presence of a new hope, a light that seemed to warm every fiber of her being. Her eyes, previously clouded with tears of relief, now fixed on the judge, who nodded in a gesture that seemed to carry a silent apology. The defense lawyer, a young man with a compassionate gaze, gently squeezed her arm, guiding her out of the defendant's bench. Each step was hesitant, as if she were relearning to walk in a world that until a few minutes before seemed to have closed off forever. The murmur in the courtroom subsided, giving way to a respectful silence as Clara passed. The people in the audience, once silent judges of her misfortune, now looked at her with a mix of admiration and empathy. Some waved, others smiled, and a white-haired lady, sitting in the front row, brought her hand to her chest, her eyes moist as if sharing Clara's emotion. It was a testament to the human connection that, even in the darkest moments, can emerge and restore faith. Clara felt a warmth in her heart, realizing she was not alone on her journey. The truth resonated in just souls. The prosecutor, still pale and visibly shaken, observed the scene with an expression of deep reflection. He knew that justice had been served, but the weight of his near failure, of having pursued an innocent woman with such vehemence, weighed on his conscience. His eyes met Clara's for a brief instant, and she saw in them no longer accusation, but a silent acknowledgement of the error, and perhaps a glimmer of respect. It was a reminder that truth, no matter how much they tried to hide it, always finds a way to come to light. Outside the courthouse, the cool afternoon breeze kissed Clara's face, and she took a deep breath, smelling the jasmine flowers growing in the courthouse garden. It was a scent she hadn't noticed in months, muffled by the smell of old paper and the tension of the enclosed environment. The defense lawyer, Dr. Ricardo, offered her a glass of water, and she accepted it with a faint smile, feeling her throat dry. "You are free, Clara," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Justice, however long it took, prevailed." Clara nodded, the words lost in her mind. "Dr. Elias, he would be proud," she murmured, thinking of her mentor. The memory of the scientist, with his gentle smile and curious eyes, brought a pang of sadness, but also a sense of duty fulfilled. The fight was not just for her own innocence, but for the honor of a man who dedicated his life to science and kindness. She knew that overcoming that immense obstacle was not the end of the story, but the beginning of a new chapter, where faith in justice and the strength of the human spirit would be the guides. The next steps would be to rebuild, to heal the wounds, and to honor the truth that a cunning raven had brought to everyone's eyes. Life, she realized, was a precious gift, and freedom, an immense relief. Life, she realized, was a precious gift, and freedom, an immense relief. Dr. Ricardo, her lawyer, who had become a pillar of strength during the dark months, offered her his arm. Clara accepted it, feeling the firmness of his support as they walked through the courthouse corridors. Each step echoed the promise of a rediscovered future. Her head was filled with a cacophony of emotions, the deep exhaustion of the battle, the euphoric joy of victory, and a persistent sadness for the memory of Dr. Elias, her dear mentor, whose death had triggered the entire ordeal. As they exited the imposing building, they were met by journalists and curious onlookers. Camera flashes exploded, and voices rose in a chorus of questions. Ricardo, with protective gentleness, stepped in front of Clara. "Please give Clara some space," he requested, his voice calm but firm. "She needs peace after everything she's been through." Clara, with a faint smile, waved to neighbors and friends who, despite the accusations, had never doubted her innocence. That support, now expressed in affectionate glances, was a balm for her weary soul. Inside the waiting car, silence finally settled. Clara closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel the quiet. The image of the raven, that unusual messenger, came to her mind. How could an animal have been the instrument of such justice? It defied logic, but she accepted it with a heart full of gratitude. That raven was not just a bird, it was a symbol of truth that refused to be silenced. Ricardo, sensing Clara's state, simply drove. The road home seemed to have a new brightness. The world, once grey, now radiated vibrant colors. Upon arriving at Clara's modest house, the garden was a little neglected. The flowers she loved so much had withered. A pang of melancholy hit her, but it was quickly replaced by renewed determination. She would rebuild her home, just as she would take care of herself. Overcoming was not just about the courtroom. It was about reclaiming her life, restoring inner peace, and honoring the memory of Dr. Elias. Continuing his legacy of kindness and altruism, Ricardo accompanied her to the door. "Clara, if you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to call," he said, his voice soft. "There are still procedures to follow, but the worst is over." Clara held his hand, a gesture of profound gratitude. "Thank you, Dr. Ricardo, for everything. You were my hope." As he walked away, Clara entered her house. The smell of dust and stagnant time enveloped her. She walked to the living room window, looking at the sky that had witnessed her darkest moment and her liberation. The sun was beginning to set, painting the horizon with shades of orange and purple. It was a new beginning, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and an unwavering belief in justice. The human connection she experienced, from the support of neighbors to Ricardo's dedication, reinforced the idea that kindness and truth always find a way. She knew the healing journey would be long, but she was ready for every step, with her heart open to life again. Life, she realized, was a precious gift, and freedom, an immense relief. She knew the healing journey would be long, but she was ready for every step, with her heart open to life again. The silence of the house, once oppressive, now felt like a soft embrace, an invitation to introspection. Clara walked slowly through the living room, her fingers brushing against the furniture covered by a thin layer of dust, each object a memory of a time that seemed distant. The armchair where she used to read, the small coffee table with magazines still open to an unfinished puzzle. Everything was as she had left it, but at the same time, everything was different. Her eyes lingered on a photo frame on the shelf, displaying an old picture of Dr. Elias and her, smiling during one of their experiments in the laboratory. A pang of pain shot through her chest, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of peace. Justice was being served, and her friend's memory would be honored. She went to the kitchen, the afternoon light filtering through the window, revealing cobwebs in the corners and the dull sheen of the tiles. The kettle, which had so often boiled for afternoon tea, was dusty. Clara felt a pressing need to bring life back to that space, to restore the order and warmth that had been stolen. With a deep sigh, she picked up a cloth and began to clean, her movements slow at first, but gaining rhythm as the dirt gave way. It was a simple act, yet laden with symbolism, a first step to unearthing herself from the weight of the past months. As she cleaned, the image of the raven returned to her mind. That improbable messenger, with its astute eyes and miraculous intervention. How to explain such an event? She had no logical answers, but she felt a profound reverence, a renewed belief that there are forces in the universe that operate beyond human comprehension, ensuring that truth and justice, at times, find the most unexpected paths to manifest. It was not just a bird. It was a sign, a reminder of life's resilience and the interconnectedness of everything. The prosecutor in his office still reread Augusto Mendes's confession, incredulity and shame etched on his face. He had been so close to committing a terrible injustice. The judge, in turn, sitting in her chair in the now empty courtroom, looked at the spot where the raven had landed, an expression of astonishment and gratitude on her tired face. That day would forever change her perspective on justice. Clara in the kitchen finished cleaning the countertop, and the marble's shine reappeared. She felt exhausted, but a different kind of exhaustion, one that brought with it the promise of rest and renewal. Night fell softly, and the first stars began to dot the sky. She knew that emotional wounds would take time to heal, that distrust and fear would leave their marks. But at that moment, she felt invincible. Overcoming was not just a concept, it was her reality. With a serene smile, Clara picked up the kettle and filled it with water, ready for the first tea in her house. Now a home again, a sanctuary of peace and hope. Clara filled the kettle with water, the soft sound filling the kitchen silence. Steam began to rise, and the familiar aroma of chamomile tea soon spread, bringing long-forgotten comfort. She sat at the small table, watching the steaming cup. Freedom was sweet, but it brought with it an unexpected emptiness. Months of struggle, adrenaline and fear had become routine, and their absence left a strange echo. What would she do now? How to rebuild a life that seemed to have been dismantled? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. It was Dr. Ricardo, her lawyer, returning with a folder in his hands. "Clara, I apologize for disturbing you so late, but there's something I need to deliver to you," he said, his voice gentle. In his hands, he held an old, richly carved wooden box. "It was found among Dr. Elias's belongings. It seems he left it for you, with instructions to be delivered only after your case was resolved. Clara took the box, feeling the weight of the wood and the gravity of Ricardo's words. Her fingers traced the carvings, and a wave of emotion washed over her. It was as if Elias, even in death, was still looking after her. Ricardo bid farewell, leaving her with the mystery. With her heart beating faster, Clara opened the box. Inside, on a bed of faded velvet, lay a leather-bound diary, a small key, and a letter, written in Elias's elegant handwriting. She opened the letter, her hands trembling. Elias's words, so familiar and warm, seemed to whisper in her mind. He spoke of a secret project, research with the potential to revolutionize medicine, but too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands. He asked Clara to continue his work, protect his discoveries, and use them for the good of humanity. It was a legacy, a testament to his faith in her, and a new mission. Meanwhile, in the prosecutor's office, the prosecutor paced back and forth, Augusto Mendez's confession still on his desk. The shame of his near failure was a heavy burden. He had been blinded by ambition and the evidence. That raven, that divine messenger, had not only saved Clara, but had also forced him into a deep self-assessment. He knew he needed to change, that justice was more than just winning a case. In Clara's house, the night advanced. She leafed through Elias's diary, pages filled with complex formulas and notes on rare plants and their healing powers. The key opened a secret compartment in the box, revealing a vial with a shimmering liquid. It was the work of a lifetime, Elias's hope for a better world. Clara felt renewed strength, a purpose emerging. Overcoming was not just surviving, but finding meaning. This was the turning point, from victim to guardian of a legacy, from reclusion to a mission of altruism. The connection with Elias, broken by death, was reborn stronger, guiding her to an unexpected and meaningful future. The tea grew cold in the cup, but Clara didn't notice. Her eyes shone with serene determination, ready to embrace the challenge entrusted by her mentor. The tea grew cold in the cup, but Clara didn't notice. Her eyes shone with serene determination, ready to embrace the challenge entrusted by her mentor. The night advanced as she delved into the pages of Elias's diary. Every word, every diagram was a glimpse into her friend's brilliant mind, and the vastness of his work filled her with even greater respect. He had dedicated his life to finding cures in rare plants, blending ancestral wisdom with modern science. The liquid in the vial, she understood, was the culmination of years of research, a concentrated hope for diseases afflicting humanity. The weight of responsibility was immense, but it didn't crush her. Instead, it infused her with renewed strength. Elias trusted her, and that was all she needed. She knew it wouldn't be easy. The world of science was complex, and she, an elderly woman with a newly restored reputation, would have to navigate it with caution. But the promise of helping people, of continuing Elias's altruistic legacy, was a beacon on her new journey. At dawn, the first rays of sun kissed the kitchen window, and Clara felt a deep yet gratifying tiredness. She hadn't slept, but her mind was clearer than ever. The first thing to do was to organize the house, bring it back to life, just as she herself was being reborn. With a damp cloth and a bucket of water, she began to clean, her movements slow and deliberate. Every speck of dust removed was a piece of the past dissipating. As she cleaned, the doorbell rang. It was Aurora, her longtime neighbor, bringing a platter of cornmeal cake and a warm smile. "Clara, my dear, I was so happy to hear. I came to bring a treat and see how you are." Aurora's eyes were moist, and she hugged Clara affectionately. That simple gesture of human connection warmed Clara's heart, reminding her that despite the ordeal, the support and kindness of her community had never abandoned her. "I'm well, Aurora, very well," Clara replied, her voice choked with emotion. "It's good to be home." They sat at the kitchen table, and Clara told a little about Elias's box, omitting the more complex details of the research. Aurora listened attentively, her eyes shining with admiration. "He was always a man ahead of his time," she said, "and you, Clara, have always been the fairest and kindest person I know. The truth always comes out, doesn't it?" Those simple words were a balm for Clara's soul. Overcoming was not just about the courtroom, but about rebuilding trust, faith in people, and in herself. She knew she would need Dr. Ricardo's help to understand the legal aspects of protecting Elias's research, and perhaps even some trusted scientists to continue the work. The journey would be long, full of obstacles, but she was not alone. The seed of Elias's altruism had been planted, and Clara was ready to cultivate it. In the prosecutor's office, the prosecutor watched the city through the window, Augusto Mendes's confession still echoing in his mind. Shame was a heavy burden, but also a catalyst for change. He knew that justice was not just about conviction, but about truth, and that he needed to re-evaluate his methods. That raven, that unusual messenger, had taught him an unforgettable lesson. Clara, in her house, felt peace settle in. Aurora's cornmeal cake was sweet, and the smell of cleanliness filled the air. She looked at Elias's diary, which rested on the table. That was her new purpose, her way of honoring a friend's memory and serving humanity. It was a new chapter, an invitation to life, and Clara, with her resilient heart, was ready to write it. Clara, with Elias's diary still on the kitchen table, felt a mix of gratitude and apprehension. The morning light, which had once seemed to promise a simple new beginning, now revealed the magnitude of the task before her. Protecting and continuing Elias's legacy would not only be a scientific challenge, but a journey full of practical and emotional obstacles. She was not a scientist, and the complexity of Elias's notes, though fascinating, was overwhelming. Her wrinkled fingers traced the symbols in the diary, and a sigh escaped her lips. Overcoming the trial had been a miracle, but this new mission would require a different resilience, an unwavering faith in herself and in the inherent goodness of Elias's project. She knew the first step was to seek legal guidance. Dr. Ricardo, with his intelligence and compassion, would be the right person to help her navigate copyrights, patents, and the protection of Elias's discoveries. Picking up the phone, Clara dialed his office number, feeling her heart beat a little faster. The secretary's cordial voice informed her that Dr. Ricardo was in a meeting, but would return her call as soon as possible. Clara left her message, briefly explaining the urgency and delicate nature of the matter. It was a small but significant step, an act of trust in the human connection that had been so vital in her liberation. While waiting, Clara decided she needed fresh air. The garden, once a refuge of peace, had been neglected during her ordeal. The rose bushes were full of weeds, and the daisies, which Elias so appreciated, had withered. With a straw hat and gardening gloves, she began to work, pulling out weeds with silent determination. Each plant, cared for, was a symbol of her own healing, of her desire to restore beauty and order to her life. The smell of wet earth and the singing of birds were a balm for her soul, reminding her of nature's simplicity and strength. In the prosecutor's office, the prosecutor, whose name was Dr. Almeida, felt the weight of Augusto Mendes's confession as a constant burden, a persistent shadow on his conscience. He had reviewed the case countless times, searching for flaws, but the truth brought by the Raven was irrefutable, an intervention that defied all logic and his own understanding of the world. The lesson was bitter, but deeply necessary. He had allowed himself to be driven by ambition, by the pursuit of victory at any cost, and had almost destroyed the life of an innocent and honorable woman. Sitting at his desk, he scribbled feverishly on a notepad, formulating new and rigorous guidelines for his team, emphasizing the importance of thorough investigation and the pursuit of truth above any personal consideration. His eyes, once focused only on conviction, now saw justice in a new light. More complex, compassionate, and profoundly human. He knew he would need to do more than just change his methods. He needed to rebuild public faith in his work, and perhaps, most difficult, his own faith in himself, in his ability to be an agent of true justice. Clara, in the garden, paused to rest, watching a blue butterfly delicately land on a rose. Life continued, in all its fragility and beauty. She felt a wave of hope. The journey would be long, but she was not alone. The seed of Elias's altruism, now in her hands, would flourish, and she would be its guardian. With a serene smile, Clara picked up the pruning shears, ready to shape the future, one branch at a time. Overcoming was a continuous process, and she was ready for every new challenge. With her heart open to life again, Clara, pruning shears in hand, felt the morning sun warm her back. The garden, little by little, regained its vibrancy under her care. Every weed pulled, every dry branch pruned, was a small triumph. A reminder that life, even after the harshest storms, always found a way to flourish. She allowed herself a moment of contemplation, watching the graceful flight of a hummingbird approaching a newly opened flower. The beauty of nature was a balm for her soul, a promise of renewal. The phone rang, pulling her from her reverie. It was Dr. Ricardo. His voice, always calm and professional, brought immediate relief. "Clara, I received your message. I'm available to discuss the delicate matter you mentioned." Clara explained to him about Elias's diary and the vial, the mission her mentor had entrusted to her. Ricardo listened attentively, and Clara could feel the seriousness in his silence. "This is of immense magnitude, Clara," he finally said. "We will need great caution and a well-structured plan to protect Dr. Elias's discoveries and ensure they are used for good, as he wished." The conversation lasted almost an hour. Ricardo advised her on the need to register patents, seek bioethics specialists, and assemble a reliable research team. Clara felt a knot in her stomach. The complexity of the task seemed overwhelming for an elderly woman who had just emerged from a judicial nightmare. "But Dr. Ricardo," she confessed, her voice tinged with insecurity, "I am not a scientist. How can I lead something so grand?" Ricardo, with his usual gentleness, reassured her. "Your greatest strength, Clara, is your integrity and your connection to Dr. Elias. He chose you for a reason. Don't worry about the technical details now. We will find the right people to help. Your role is to be the guardian of his vision." Ricardo's words were a balm. He reminded her that true leadership was not just about technical knowledge, but about values, about the ability to inspire and to stay focused on the greater purpose. Elias's faith in her, now echoed by Ricardo, rekindled her determination. She was not alone. Human connection, which had saved her in court, would again be her pillar. Meanwhile, in the prosecutor's office, Dr. Almeida felt the weight of every word he wrote in his new guidelines. The pen scratched against the paper, and the silence of the office was broken only by the sound of his heavy breathing. He had called an emergency meeting with his entire team for the next day. He needed not only to explain what had happened, but to instill in them the lesson he had learned the hard way. True justice required humility, active listening, and a tireless pursuit of truth, not victory. He reviewed Clara's case one last time. Every detail, every piece of evidence he had misinterpreted. The image of the raven, a winged messenger of truth, lingered in his mind, a constant reminder of his failure and the redemption offered to him. The shame was still there, but now it was accompanied by a renewed purpose, a thirst for a purer, more altruistic justice. He knew that rebuilding his reputation and, more importantly, his own moral compass would be a long and arduous path. Clara, after the call, returned to the garden, but now with new energy. The task before her was monumental, but not impossible. She visualized Elias's flowers, the rare plants he studied, and felt a wave of inspiration. His legacy would not just be a set of formulas, but a living hope for the world. She would start small, organizing the diary, researching the plants Elias mentioned. Each small step would be a tribute to him, a way to ensure that his kindness and vision continued to touch lives. Overcoming, she realized, was not a destination, but a continuous journey, a dance between fragility and strength, always guided by hope and human connection. She was ready to dance. Clara, with a light heart and a mind full of new possibilities, felt an energy she hadn't experienced in a long time. The dance of life, as she imagined it, would begin with small but firm steps, guided by the light of Elias's legacy. Back in the kitchen, where the scent of tea still lingered, she picked up her mentor's diary. The yellowed pages, filled with tiny handwriting and complex drawings of molecular structures and exotic plants, were a universe apart. Her eyes, though tired with age, shone with renewed curiosity. She didn't understand most of the formulas, feeling the vast distance between her life experience and Elias's scientific genius. But she could feel his passion and dedication in every stroke. It was as if he were there, beside her, guiding her through that labyrinth of knowledge. She decided to start with what she could understand. The plant descriptions. Elias had noted Latin names, collection sites, and detailed observations about their healing properties. With a hardcover notebook and a pen, Clara began to transcribe, in her neat and firm handwriting, the most accessible passages. Her wrinkled fingers, which had so often held knitting needles, were now dedicated to a task of a different magnitude. It was slow work, requiring concentration and patience, but each deciphered word brought a profound sense of purpose. She saw herself as an archaeologist, unearthing a treasure of knowledge that could benefit humanity. Meanwhile, miles away, Dr. Almeida prepared for the most important meeting of his career. In the large conference hall of the prosecutor's office, he observed the empty chairs, feeling the weight of responsibility. His team, accustomed to an aggressive, victory-focused approach, would certainly question his new guidelines. He knew he would face resistance, perhaps even skepticism. But the image of the raven and Clara's near tragedy had etched an undeniable truth into his soul. Justice could not be blind to humanity. He needed to be the catalyst for change, even if it meant challenging years of tradition. He rehearsed his speech, the words echoing in the empty hall, each syllable laden with new meaning. He would speak of humility, of the importance of listening attentively, of questioning one's own certainties, and of seeking truth with an open heart. He would mention Clara, not as a mistake, but as a living lesson, a testament to the system's fragility and the need for compassion. His gestures were firm, his hands occasionally clenched, but his eyes revealed the internal tension, the battle to rebuild not only his team's faith, but more importantly, his own faith in himself. Clara, in the silence of her home, felt the afternoon advance. She had filled several pages of her notebook with notes on the plants. The complexity of Elias's work was immense, an ocean of information, but the vision of helping people, of bringing hope through medicine, was a powerful engine that propelled her spirit. She knew she would need help, young and brilliant minds that could decipher the secrets Elias had left behind. But for now, she was content to be the initial guardian, the bridge between past and future, the first line of defense of an invaluable legacy. She thought of Ricardo, her lawyer. He had promised to help her find the right people, to navigate the complex world of science and ethics. Human connection, once again, would be the key to unraveling the path. Elias's altruism would not die with him. Clara would ensure it flourished, spreading like the seeds of a rare plant. She closed the diary with affection, feeling a wave of profound gratitude. Elias had given her not only a mission, but a new meaning to life, a purpose that transcended pain and injustice. The next day, Prosecutor Almeida's meeting began. The room was full, his team's faces displaying a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and apprehension. He took a deep breath, looked at each of them, seeking a sign of understanding, and began to speak, his voice firm but laden with a new conviction. "Colleagues," he said, "we have an important lesson to learn, a lesson delivered to us in a way we will never forget." Clara, as she prepared a tea of fresh herbs picked from her garden, felt a slight ache in her wrist from so much writing, but a smile lit up her face. It was a welcome ache, a physical reminder of her new purpose, of her dedication. She was not a scientist, but she was a guardian, and that, she realized, was enough. The journey would be long, full of unexpected challenges, but she was ready for every step, every new discovery that awaited her. Hope for Clara was no longer a distant concept. It was a green shoot, strong and resilient, blossoming in her heart, promising a future of altruism and connection. "Colleagues," he said, "we have an important lesson to learn, a lesson delivered to us in a way we will never forget." Prosecutor Almeida's voice, though firm, carried a rare vulnerability. He paused, sweeping his gaze across the faces before him. There was curiosity, but also distrust. He knew he had to be honest. "I am referring to Clara's case," he continued, and a murmur ran through the room. "It was a turning point for me. I, as a prosecutor, failed. I failed to see beyond the evidence, to question my certainties, to seek the truth with the depth that justice demands." His eyes, once focused on victory, now reflected humility. He did not hide the shame, but transformed it into a catalyst. "I was blinded by ambition, by haste, and almost condemned an innocent woman. Had it not been for an unusual intervention, Clara's life would have been destroyed and true justice denied." He described the Raven's arrival and Augusto Mendez's confession. The room was in absolute silence, incredulity mixed with respect. "That was not just an extraordinary event," Almeida continued, his voice gaining strength. "It was a divine reminder. Justice is an ideal greater than any of us. It's not about winning, but about serving truth, compassion, humanity. From today, our guidelines will change. We will prioritize thorough investigation, active listening, the search for every nuance, every shadow of doubt. We will not seek merely conviction, but the unwavering certainty of truth. Every case will be treated with the humility of one who knows that a human life is in our hands." He looked at each team member, his gestures expansive, the passion for renewed justice shining. "We will rebuild public faith and our own faith. We will be agents of true justice, not mere collectors of victories." Meanwhile, Clara, in her home, felt a slight ache in her wrist from so much writing, but a smile lit up her face. It was a welcome ache, a physical reminder of her new purpose, of her dedication. She was not a scientist, but a guardian, and that, she realized, was enough. The journey would be long, full of unexpected challenges, but she was ready for every step, every new discovery. Hope for Clara was no longer a distant concept. It was a green shoot, strong and resilient, blossoming in her heart, promising a future of altruism and connection. News of Prosecutor Almeida's meeting and his new guidelines reached her through a call from Dr. Ricardo, who, moved, recounted the prosecutor's words. "He mentioned you, Clara," Ricardo said, "as an example of how justice should be served with humility and truth. It's a profound change, and he seems truly transformed." Clara listened to Ricardo's words with emotion. Justice, she thought, was not just a verdict, but a continuous process of redemption. The raven had saved her life and planted a seed of transformation in the heart of a man once unyielding. Elias's altruism, which propelled her, found an echo in the prosecutor's new vision of justice. It was as if the threads of their lives intertwined, showing that kindness, truth, and overcoming could change individuals and systems. She closed Elias's diary, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the lightness of hope. The journey would be long, but she was not alone. Human connection, faith in truth, and the promise of a better future were the pillars upon which she would build her mentor's legacy. One step at a time, with her heart open to life and to the justice that finally was beginning to flourish. Clara, with her heart open to life and to the justice that was finally beginning to flourish, felt a new urgency. The conversation with Dr. Ricardo had solidified the magnitude of the task, but also ignited a flame of determination. She could no longer postpone it. That same week, Ricardo scheduled a series of preliminary meetings. The first was with Dr. Helena Costa, a renowned bioethicist whose reputation for integrity and wisdom was unquestionable. Clara, dressed in her best linen suit, felt a flutter in her stomach as she entered Dr. Costa's elegant office. Helena, a woman with silver hair and piercing eyes, greeted her with a welcoming smile. "Clara, it's an honor to meet you. Dr. Elias's story and your own are inspiring." The conversation flowed with surprising ease. Clara, with Elias's diary in hand, explained her mentor's vision, the hope for a more human and accessible medicine. Dr. Helena listened attentively, her slender fingers occasionally touching her chin in a sign of deep concentration. "Dr. Elias's legacy is a treasure, Clara," Helena said, her voice soft but firm. "My role will be to ensure that his research is developed with the highest ethics, protecting not only the discoveries, but also human dignity at every step." Clara felt a weight lifted from her shoulders. Dr. Helena saw not just the science, but the soul behind it. Meanwhile, at the public prosecutor's office, Prosecutor Almeida's transformation began to reverberate. The meeting with his team had been tense, but his words, laden with brutal honesty and a renewed vision, had planted seeds. In the following days, he rigorously implemented the new guidelines. Each new case was reviewed with a more critical lens, each testimony listened to with heightened attention. He himself, once impatient, now dedicated hours to analyzing details, seeking not fault, but truth in its entirety. His colleagues, initially skeptical, observed the change with a mix of surprise and growing respect. A young prosecutor, Dr. Lucas, approached Almeida after a meeting. "Prosecutor, your words about Clara, they really made me think. I had never seen justice that way." Almeida nodded, a slight smile appearing on his lips. The rebuilding would be slow, but the first bricks were being laid. Justice for Elias also advanced. Augusto Mendez, after his shocking confession, was being prosecuted. The details were kept confidential, but Clara knew that truth had prevailed. There was no violence, just the cold, relentless machinery of the law acting to correct a monumental error. She felt no hatred for Augusto, only a deep sadness for the ambition that had consumed him. Back at Clara's house, the garden flourished under her care. The rose bushes, once withered, displayed vibrant buds. The raven, that winged messenger, occasionally landed on her rooftop, observing her with its astute eyes. For Clara, it was no longer a symbol of despair, but of hope, that truth always finds a way, even through the skies. She knew the journey to unravel Elias's legacy would be long, but now she had a team, a clear purpose, and the certainty that human connection and altruism were the greatest forces. Overcoming was a continuous process, and she was ready for every new dawn. With her heart full of gratitude, and the promise of a future where Elias's kindness could finally touch the world. Clara, with a heart full of gratitude and the promise of a future where Elias's kindness could finally touch the world, dedicated herself body and soul to the mission. Meetings with Dr. Helena Costa and Dr. Ricardo became more frequent, and in a short time, a small team of young scientists, inspired by Elias's story and Clara's unwavering integrity, began to form. They were brilliant minds, full of energy and a genuine desire to make a difference, to transform science into service for humanity. Clara, though she didn't understand the complexities of the formulas, was the moral compass of the group, the tireless guardian of her mentor's vision. She recounted Elias's stories with a sparkle in her eyes, shared his most personal notes and the challenges he had faced, instilling in each of them the passion and altruism that Elias represented. Her eyes, once marked by pain and uncertainty, now shone with the light of a renewed purpose. She watched the young people working in the makeshift laboratory Ricardo had secured, a modest space, yet vibrant with innovative ideas and contagious hope, and felt a deep joy, a warmth that heated her soul. Elias's legacy was not just a set of scientific discoveries, it was a complex web of human connections, a living testament that truth and kindness, no matter how much they tried to silence them, always find their way to the light. Meanwhile, at the public prosecutor's office, the seed planted by Prosecutor Almeida blossomed in unexpected and deeply significant ways. The emergency meeting had been just the beginning of a transformation that would extend throughout the entire system. He continued to lead by example, his demeanor more thoughtful, his decisions more just and compassionate, always seeking truth above victory. Dr. Lucas, the young prosecutor who was once a skeptical young prosecutor, was now a respected judge, known for his compassion and tireless pursuit of truth, always remembering Clara's story as a beacon. The team, which once viewed justice as a chess game to be won at all costs, now saw it as a delicate balance, requiring equilibrium, discernment, and above all, humanity. Almeida, in his office, often looked at Clara's photo he kept on his desk, a constant reminder of humility, redemption, and the capacity for change. He had personally apologized to her, a brief encounter, yet laden with emotion and sincerity, where Clara, with her usual gentleness and wisdom, simply smiled and said, "Life gives us second chances, prosecutor. What matters is what we do with them, how we use them for good." The phrase echoed in his mind, driving him to be a tireless agent of change, a passionate defender of true justice. Months turned into years. Elias's project, under Clara's inspiring leadership, began to yield promising fruits, exceeding all initial expectations. Patents were registered, protecting the discoveries for the benefit of all, and the first clinical studies, conducted with the highest ethics under Dr. Helena's rigorous supervision, showed encouraging results, offering real hope to many. Elias's vision of accessible and human medicine was becoming a tangible reality, a beacon of hope for the future. Clara, now older, with even whiter hair, but with an unbreakable spirit and contagious energy, saw the world with new eyes, full of wisdom and compassion. Her home garden was a faithful reflection of her soul, vibrant, resilient, and overflowing with life in every flower and leaf. The raven, her silent and enigmatic messenger, still appeared occasionally, landing on the rooftop like a winged guardian of the truth it had brought, an eternal symbol that justice at times comes from the most unexpected places. Clara's life, which was almost destroyed by the cruelest injustice, had been rebuilt on the solid pillars of hope, altruism, and profound human connection. She was not just the guardian of a scientific legacy, She was the living personification of overcoming, a luminous beacon radiating the message that, even in the darkest hours, the light of truth and kindness always finds a way to shine, transforming pain into purpose. Justice, for her, was not just a verdict pronounced in a courtroom, but the incessant pursuit of a more compassionate world, where every life mattered, every voice was heard, and every heart found its place in the great tapestry of humanity. And so Clara, with a serene smile on her wrinkled face and a heart at peace, continued her journey, knowing that Elias's seed had blossomed into a garden of hope for all, an eternal legacy of love and healing. And so Clara, with a serene smile on her wrinkled face and a heart at peace, continued her journey, knowing that Elias's seed had blossomed into a garden of hope for all, an eternal legacy of love and healing. Clara, now almost 90 years old, sat on her porch, the afternoon sun warming her face. Her blue eyes, once clouded with tears of despair, now reflected a profound serenity, a glow that came from within. Elias's diary, her inseparable companion for so many years, rested on her lap, its pages worn from frequent handling. It was no longer a burden, but a shared treasure, a living story she had helped to write. The Elias Legacy Project, as it had been affectionately named, had become a global institution. That small team of young scientists, which began in a makeshift laboratory, now led a network of research and development with centers in various countries, all dedicated to accessible medicine and healing based on Elias's discoveries. Dr. Helena Costa, with her unwavering ethics, and Dr. Ricardo, with his strategic vision, had been essential pillars, but it was Clara's passion and resilience that kept the flame alive. She was not the scientist, but the soul of the project, the guardian of the humanity behind every formula. With each new discovery, each life touched by a treatment that once seemed unattainable, Clara felt Elias's presence. It was as if he whispered in her ear, a constant reminder that kindness, when sown, blossoms in 1,000 directions. Altruism for her was not a distant virtue, but the driving force that united people, that transformed pain into purpose and injustice into a lesson. She thought of Prosecutor Almeida, whose transformation had been as profound as her own. He had not only reformed the public prosecutor's office, but had inspired a new generation of jurists. Dr. Lucas, who was once a skeptical young prosecutor, was now a respected judge, known for his compassion and tireless pursuit of truth, always remembering Clara's story as a beacon. Justice for Almeida had become a service to humanity, not a race for victories. He and Clara maintained sporadic correspondence, exchanging words of respect and gratitude, a silent testament to the human capacity for redemption. Clara's garden, now lush and full of life, was a microcosm of her own journey. The rose bushes, once withered, bloomed in vibrant colors, their soft petals an invitation to contemplation. The raven, her old friend with dark feathers, still visited her. It perched on the highest branch of the mango tree, observing her with its astute and intelligent eyes. There was no longer the despair of the trial day, only a silent connection, a mutual recognition that truth, at times, chooses the most improbable messengers to manifest itself. It was a constant reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope can emerge from where it is least expected, and that faith in human kindness is a force capable of moving mountains. Clara closed the diary, feeling the weight of history in her hands. Her life, which seemed destined to end in disgrace, had transformed into a testament to resilience and purpose. She had overcome pain, shame, and injustice, and emerged stronger, wiser. The human connection that saved her in court continued to guide her, weaving a tapestry of support and love. She knew that her journey, though long, had been rewarded with the realization of a dream that was not just hers, but Elias's and all those who believed in a better world. With a sigh of contentment, Clara stood up, her steps firm despite her age. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple. It was a new twilight, an invitation to rest, but also a promise of a new dawn, where Elias's legacy would continue to flourish, and justice, compassion, and hope would continue to guide humanity with their light.